Hello and welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
And David, in this week's episode, what are we going to be talking about?
It's a Technics, Mike.
Oh,
your favourite hi-fi brand.
Do you know, the last time we reviewed a Technics product, then it was a really popular riff.
It was.
And we got loads of really cool comments and lots of nice things, which really took me by surprise.
Yes.
I thought people might say, oh, that's not proper hi-fi and all of these things, but not at all, was it? It was totally the opposite.
Well, you thought everyone was as snobbish as you are,
I
Mike.
know. I'm growing out of my snobbery, and this and the device you've bought is helping to erode my Technics or anti-Technics snobbery, because we've got a CD player.
We have.
From the late 80s, I believe.
Yep. It's a Technics SLP 999 from 1989.
Called the Police.
Absolutely.
There we are. Excellent. No, it's a big, super cool. Here's one you made earlier.
Yeah.
It's a big, super cool beast. It really is.
In the great traditions of Hi-Fi Riff.
You see.
Kind of live demonstrations. Because we once got some sort of complaints that we weren't showing the stuff in the videos, didn't we? So we decided to kind of.
It's quite difficult to show big speakers and things. In fact, it was the ATCs. Wasn't it the SCM40s, which somebody said that they didn't believe we had them. And the irony is, I didn't want to give them back. I had them for so long. ATC complained about me.
Exactly.
So
you've been blacklisted by ATC now as a hanger-oner
for keeping their speakers for too long. So I had to take a selfie of me with the ATCs to prove that we had them. So yes,
and it looks very stupid. So perhaps you'd like to put it in this video to remind everyone.
Yes, so I'll see.
Would you like to turn on my Technics?
Oh yeah. I really would. I'll press your button. There we are. Look at that. Oh, fantastic. And it's got, look, I've got to say, the reason why I'm getting converted here is because it's got the best party trick ever on a CD player. Okay.
Well, I think we should wait and tell the viewers about that in a minute.
You're doing you're baiting.
So stay tuned to find out its best party trick ever. And it certainly impressed Mike, who's not easily impressed by anything if it's got Technics written on the front. No. So I'm just doing a kind of aerobics physical workout here. My upper body strength is waning, I can tell you, under the weight of this thing.
Although it's not as heavy as, say, a flagship Sony or something like that at all, is it? You wouldn't be able to do that.
No, I wouldn't be able to do that. I'd be basically having sort of passing out with it even now.
Yes,
it still feels pretty heavy from where I'm sitting.
Sure.
So, but I think the award for the most buttons ever on a CD player goes to this.
Yes.
Would you like to put a CD in?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to. I've got it. Again, one we made earlier. So we'll hit the button and we'll put. It's Grace Under Pressure by Rush. One of my favourite albums, actually. Great album.
And press play.
Oh, you see, here we go. Play. And let's hope we can make this work.
There you go.
Can we see that?
It's playing.
Yeah. And what's it got?
I think you haven't.
Oh, have I not? We haven't enabled them.
No.
Oh, have I not? So we're playing. Oh, there's a button for it.
Down there.
Oh my gosh!
Excuse me, viewers, while my
there we are. Okay. Here we go. Party trick.
There you go.
It's got VU meters. It's the only CD player I have ever seen with VU meters. How cool is that?
It is, and basically, everything I've ever said about hi-fi, I take back. If it's got VU meters, then
that's all it needs to have.
It's the best.
Yes.
And obviously, being a CD player, you might ask the question, why has it got VU meters?
I hadn't thought of that.
Because normally people wanted VU meters back in the old days when they were recording, like with a cassette deck or something.
Yes, yeah.
But I think I still haven't quite figured that out, really.
It's just because they wanted to be super cool. Simple as that. So this was their flagship model, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. So this was £1,000. £1,000?
No, it was £600 in 1989. Which is today's money, 1,500.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There we are. So I would imagine they should have sold a lot of these.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping maybe some of our riff-raff have got one, because certainly I was really impressed when we listened to it, really, really impressed. It sounds fantastic. Totally shocked by a 1989 CD player. And do you know, since we've been doing Riff, we've found a few of these little hidden gems from yesteryear, and I think my memory's going. Well, I know it is, but I think my memory's going because
you just said that.
So back in sort of the 80s, I really don't remember being impressed by any CD players except for really one or two high-end ones, which will remain nameless at the moment because we want to buy one on eBay and use it for a riff. So we're not going to tell you which that one is at the moment. We will once we've sourced one and bought one. But I don't remember them sounding as good as this. And this sounds terrific. We've had a couple of products like that over the time. The other one was the Mission with the Cyrus, the Cyrus CD player. Again, that sounded really, really good.
Yes, the DAD7.
Yeah. So where was I when these products were out? Because this is a great sounding CD player.
Yeah. Well, you were probably
being snobbish,
reading a Lynn catalogue or a name catalogue, Mike.
I would have been.
And you'd be in Oxford on a Saturday afternoon, walking past Laskey's and thinking, look at those plebs going in there to buy their Technics CD player. We pray for them in their darkness.
Absolutely, and I'd go into sort of Westwood and Mason and look at their Lins.
Look at their Lins, exactly. So, and there's nothing wrong with Lins, but the point is there was actually other stuff going on as well.
So we're now finding out all these years later. But no, it sounds absolutely super. I'm really impressed. And in fact, we've done some interesting things here, haven't we? Because we took the digital output of this, and we put it into your Chord TT2.
Yes.
And obviously
Hugo TT2.
The Hugo TT2. Yeah. That always seems to make everything sound good. Yeah. I mean, you've even used it with a fairly cheap Sony DVD player as a transport, and the Chord seems to sort out, all sins. But actually sounded really, really good with this. But the real surprise was when we unplugged that and just played it straight through the DAC, and it was like, wow, this still sounds really good.
Yeah, that's right. You use it as a digital transport, and through the Chord Hugo TT2, it sounds great. You think, that's the Chord Hugo TT2. And normally then you unplug whatever you're playing and play it through its analog outputs, and it's like,
Yes.
Well, that didn't happen with this one.
Remarkable. No.
And so it kind of brings us into something that was really the kind of theme, the core selling point, really, of the SLP 999, which is its multi-bit DAC package, you could say. So if you think, you remember CD, the way CD was sold. We started with, those Philips machines, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like the CD100, which are 14-bit, 4 times oversampling.
Right.
And there were sort of Japanese ones which are 16-bit, 2 times oversampling, and then Philips came along and replaced its 14x4 machines with the 16x4, which was the famous Philips TDA 1541 DAC chip that everyone goes on about on Hi-Fi forums. Then, as this was in the mid-80s, and then as the 80s progressed, then it was no longer sold as 16-bit 4 times. You had companies now doing 18-bit machines, and what they were doing, they were pairing up 16-bit DACs to kind of fiddle the figures, as it were, to create a theoretical 18-bit resolution. And Technics was just as guilty as anyone else. So its predecessor was the SLP 900. And that was an 18-bit 18-bit 4 times oversampling, and this one, was 20-bit 8 times oversampling. So we got there in the end. But basically, the 80s was a specs war, wasn't it, with CD players, and everyone got more and more bits and oversampling and ever higher oversampling.
Not to mention Bitstream.
That's right. Well, Bitstream then killed all of that, didn't it? Because after 1990, in 1990, all of the major CD player manufacturers moved to Bitstream, and so suddenly you had 1-bit digital words sampled at a far higher frequency than had been the norm with the 16-bit machines, and suddenly the kind of 16 by 2, 14 by 4, 16 by 4, 18 by 4, all that kind of stuff that had happened and been going on and ramping up, like a kind of nuclear arms race through the late 90s, basically stopped because machines became Bitstream. Technics replaced this with its MASH machines, its multi-stage noise shaping technology. I knew you knew that.
I did know that, yes, yeah.
And that wasn't quite Bitstream, but it was kind of close. And then Bitstream kind of came on with all the Philips machines, and we all basically stayed 1-bit ever since.
Unless you're Cambridge.
Yes, yeah. And these chips have got ever more, faster and so on. But this was the last, you could say, it was the last of the Hi-Fi Mohicans. It was one of the very last multi-bit machines. And what was interesting for us, and I will get to the point eventually,
once we've done the full potted history of Hi-Fi,
was that hearing this machine, this multi-bit machine, against a Bitstream machine or a 1-bit DAC, a modern 1-bit DAC, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Really was, yeah. And there's some things which I really genuinely like about this. And it was, if you had expectations, if you had sort of preconceived ideas of what you think it would sound like, you'd say, well, it's going to be bright, it's going to be shouty, it's not going to be much fun to listen to, your ears are going to bleed, that kind of thing. Not at all. No, not at all. It's smooth. In fact, it's almost quite mellow sounding.
Yeah.
And it's tonally, and it's totally not what I expected at all. I really like it. I really like it. Now, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this. I get told off by David behind the scenes for saying things like this. But eBay. How much would you pay for one of these on eBay?
Couple £100, maybe £300-400 tops.
If you could get one of those for £200, I think that's Hi-Fi bargain of the century.
It is.
I really do. And how much did you, dare I ask, pay for that one?
Well, this one was pretty dirty and shabby, but it was basically a couple of £100.
Yes, wow.
And it needed the laser lens cleaning and all that kind of stuff.
But nothing too arduous. No,
nothing. No extra expense.
And you've ended up with a cracking player for that. I mean, you can't buy anything for £200 these days.
No,
that's a couple of Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab CDs, isn't it? It's that's just a super duper hi-fi bargain.
Well, to me, the great thing is it's a different way of listening to digital audio. I think that these multi-bit machines have more life to them. They've got a kind of swagger and a swing to them, haven't they?
Yeah.
And they seem to be very good at dynamics as well.
Yes.
And you get quite a kind of it's like a kind of party sound, isn't it?
It is really good timing as well. Yeah. Really good timing. What's on the back panel? What can we plug it into?
So
just have a quick nose. So we've got So we've got optical out, and that's it.
Yeah.
And just your line out. So you've got an optical output, and that's it. Okay. Which I have to say is a little bit of a shame, because it would have been lovely to have had an input where you could use that DAC.
Yeah.
Because then for £200 you've got a really, really good DAC, haven't you? But look, just as a really cool CD player, I think for £200 that's brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think why it's really on point these days is obviously CDs is being sort of gradually replaced by streaming. But people still have CD collections.
Yeah.
So if you had a CD collection and no player, and you didn't really want to spend a couple of £1,000 on a CD player because you're not going to use it very much, this is your answer.
Yeah.
This is totally your answer.
Well, funnily enough, there's quite a lot of them around still, because unlike Mike, a lot of people weren't snobbish about Technics in the 80s, and there are quite a few around. The predecessor is the SLP 990. Which is, I think, cost quite a lot more. It was about £1,000 in 1988, and this followed and cost £600 in 1989. But Technics claimed it had lower distortion because it, for reasons including the fact that it had so-called 20-bit 8 times oversampling, where the predecessor was 18-bit 4 times oversampling. So basically, more is better if you believe the spec swore stuff of the time.
Yeah.
But even so, those multi-bit machines of the late 80s were all interesting, and the discovery, I think, for us is that Technics were making some very good ones. And the kind of icing on the cake is that I think this has got more buttons than any other CD player ever made.
Yeah, and do you know, if I wanted to sell bucket loads of these, and I was manager of Laskys, then I'd pop one in the window, I would put it on repeat, I'd press the VU button on, and then just let everybody look at it and drool at it. You'd have a little queue outside Laskys. You'd have people bring their sleeping bags. I would. I'd have my sleeping bag and my little tent, so I could just wake up in the morning and the first thing I could see is those VU meters. That would be so cool.
Well, it was in some ways a better time when cars had trick computers, and that was a really big deal.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You had turbos and no traction control, and no ABS.
Yes,
and you
absolutely.
could,
absolutely.
So the good old days when you could drive with drive with a mobile phone, in one hand and a can of Carling Black Label in the other.
Absolutely, and also with this, look, if you're ever bored, you can just find out what all the buttons do. That'll take you about a year.
Indeed.
So brilliant. Let's do a riffometer.
I'm going to give it 9.
I've got to give it 9 just for the VU meters.
Yep.
Just brilliant. Look, for 200 quid on eBay. And with VU meters, and it sounds as good as it does. It's 9 every day of the week, isn't it?
Hard not to love.
It's hard not to love. Excellent. You heard it here first again on Hi-Fi Riff. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Thank you for joining us. We very much look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.